Hi guys, welcome to my channel. Today I'm gonna give you some tips that are going to help you speak more confidently during a presentation. It might be at work, it might be pitching, it might be anything. I'm gonna give you some tips that helped me. I still struggle a little bit while speaking foreign languages. It depends really on the context. It depends which foreign language I'm supposed to be speaking. It really depends if the people around me are native speakers or are people like me who learned this language and who use this language for communication at work, for example. But still, there are some universal tips that I'm going to give you today. Hopefully it's going to be helpful. Let's dive into this together. So just to give you a general context, I get to speak foreign languages pretty much everywhere in my environment because I live in Geneva. I work in a company where I get to speak mostly two languages, French and English. We get to speak with clients. Sometimes you need to present some ideas to your colleagues. And it is very important to be able to get across what you want to say efficiently so that everyone in the audience could understand the message. And sometimes it can be challenging if it's not your mother tongue that you're speaking. You feel a little bit limited, maybe you have some thoughts about your accent. So I'm going to give you some piece of advice that I use daily to overcome some problems I face while presenting in a foreign language. So my piece of advice number one would be slow down. Sometimes when you are nervous about something, you start speaking very fast, you are repeating yourself, you are maybe adding some fillers that actually don't add anything to the context. Also, maybe people will lose you at some point and it's going to be so much more difficult for them to understand what the message is that you're trying to get across. So the piece of advice number one is just to slow down, to breathe and to see actually if the audience is getting your message. Of course, if you're doing it online, it might be a bit challenging, so that's why it can be also helpful to ask for feedback. For example, you have finished a part of your presentation and then you ask whether everything was clear and you can move on to another part of your presentation. And at this point, some people might raise some questions, and this is where you're going to see if they understood or not. Sometimes if people don't ask questions, it doesn't mean that they understood everything, but maybe it was too complex for them to understand because you are going too fast. So there won't be any questions, and sometimes it's not a very good sign either. Another thing which is probably applicable not only while speaking a foreign language but presenting in general, you should make sure that you are bringing some intonation to your speech. Please do not speak monotonously. It's really the worst, especially if you have learned your speech or if you are reading, which is even worse. But everyone can see it, and this is a real presentation killer. Because when the person starts speaking monotonously, very quickly, even if it's slowly but monotonously, honestly it's very complicated to understand and to concentrate. I feel like my brain just shuts down, especially when you speak a foreign language. And if you, like I suggested, slow down, look at your audience, interact with your audience, put some emotion into your speech. This is definitely going to help you to better deliver your message. My next piece of advice would be stop thinking about your accent. I mean, we all have an accent because it's not our mother tongue. It's going to be influenced by other languages that you speak. That you're going to maybe bring something new into your accent. It's not going to be necessarily the most commonly expected accent that you have, but you just have to deal with it. I know, especially in my culture, we are kind of ashamed because, you know, if you don't have a great accent, that means that you don't really master the language. And people really get shy, and especially when you need to present something, if you are going to think about the way you sound, about your accent, that the people are going to see that you're not a native speaker. Of course they are going to see that you're not a native speaker, but this is finally true. Why does that bother you that much? Because the most important thing is still that people understand what you're trying to say, to get your message. If we go even further, if your message and if your presentation is very well structured, it has a very interesting idea behind it, and you present well, people won't even think about your accent. The way you share your idea, it has to be really entertaining, it has to be so engrossing that people just don't think about the way you speak, your voice. It's just a facilitator so that people can get your message. But it shouldn't be the main focus of your presentation. And if it is, it's just weird. It means that people are bored and they're trying to pick on some things, notice something weird about your accent or whatever. But generally, we live in a world where everyone, at least in a business context, speaks English, and of course the majority of those people, I might say, in some countries are not native speakers of English. So everyone has an accent, and you should not turn it into an impediment to the way you present your thoughts and ideas. Number 3. This is something that I actually notice about myself when I speak. Sometimes I use really complicated language, the written language, because when you also write something in English, for example, you tend to use phrases to sound a little bit more sophisticated, like in relation to, in order to. And when you use these in your speech, they actually do not help you. They are not your friends, because they make your phrases longer, but at the same time they don't add any value to what you are saying. So especially when you are not a native speaker, you might have a tendency to show, okay, I master this language so well that I can make very sophisticated phrases, use sophisticated words, but this again is not the point. For me, the point is to make everyone in the audience understand what you're trying to say, to understand your idea in the best possible way. So that's why I try to speak in simpler words, make it really understandable for everyone in the audience. Also, if it's a very complicated matter, so for example, I work in tax and usually our presentations get quite technical. So make sure you give a lot of background, you give sufficient details so that everyone, even the most junior or even the people that are not from your sector, could understand. For me, the greatest level of being able to present efficiently is being able to explain in a very simple way something which is complicated. And even if your colleagues are experts, I think they would still appreciate if you can just simply explain something that is complex, even though they are very much capable of understanding complex things. Another tip that I can give you is to prepare your presentation in advance. I'm not a fan of writing a script because you are not going to read, because in most cases it's very difficult to understand, it's difficult to concentrate for the audience, so don't read. But still, try to practice maybe a couple of mock presentations. If you have your loved ones who can help you with this, who can listen to you, give you some feedback, that can be great. But also, if you can just try to run a couple of times by yourself, if you can record yourself and to see how it sounds, because sometimes when I prepare a presentation, I'm so into this topic, I have read a lot and then I prepare a gist of what I have read. And that's why for me, things sometimes are self-explanatory. But if you listen to this and if you have no context, if you don't know, it's difficult to understand. So record yourself and listen to what you are saying. Is it clear? Is it clear enough? Or should you simplify? Should you change something? You can be amazed how effective this tool can be. And finally, if you don't feel confident while speaking a foreign language during a presentation, one thing that you should do is volunteer to do that more. Ask your colleagues if you can prepare short presentations before every meeting. practice, practice and practice, because with practice you can really improve your skills and it's going to be a routine. I hope that this has been helpful for you. Please let me know if you have any comments or if you don't agree with something in the comments below, and I'll see you during the next video.